Welcome to She Sells Radio. Oh my gosh, it's episode 99. How wild is that? And if you're watching the video version of this, I'm coming to you super casual. I literally just got back in a few hours ago from really my first flight since COVID, since like March of last year, which is so crazy. I was in Austin this past week for a mastermind with my coach, and I just always think this is part of why I love having my own community of women that I serve and help with my brand. And I think there's so much value to getting out of your current environment. I know right now, as you're listening, if you haven't traveled yet, you're probably also itching to travel and get out, but just getting out of your current environment and seeing something different and seeing something new and connecting and interacting with just absolutely amazing, amazing other women. In my case, the group that I'm with is all moms actually who are building $1 million plus businesses. We had the most phenomenal guest speakers, and I just, this one was interesting. And it's actually, I'm going to do a little bit of a longer intro with this because I want to just start sharing with you a little more of my personal life and kind of share with you what's going on. But this does tie in with the theme of today's podcast, which is normally when I go into a business event or a business mastermind, my mind is set on, okay, how do I grow revenue, right? That's the number one focus, at least it was for me for so long. But this time I really went in with how do I show up differently as a wife and as a mom, as She Sells is taking off and our business has just exploded recently. And really, my intention and my focus was how do I continue to keep family first while we continue to just grow the business and excel in that area? And so it was a really, really different approach to any mastermind that I'd ever been a part of. But I feel like at the end of the day, if you make all the money in the world and your personal life is ranging anywhere from just not thriving to in shambles, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. And so I have this new energy. I have some new perspectives. We had some of the top coaches in the world in to help coach us. And I had amazing, amazing conversations with some of them. And so check out my social because I've been sharing about a lot of it, specifically on Instagram. And so that's really just the energy that I'm coming to you in here. And of course, Jack had his first flight and did really well. I was very pleasantly surprised. We had a few screaming fits, but nothing that was enough to clear out the row next to us. So we felt good about that. So hey, before we get into the what today is about, I want to just share with you, if you are listening to this in real time, so if you're listening to this as it comes out, we are hosting a live masterclass on May 27th, your first six figures. I've run this a couple times now, and I decided to do it more regularly because every time I run it, literally women come out of there saying, I never knew that about myself. I never knew what was actually holding me back from making more money. I never actually understood that some of the struggles I'd had with sales weren't really my fault, but a lot of it is conditioning, and that I've been taught the wrong thing about myself, about how I'm wired, about how I need to sell to manage my time. And I'm so passionate about teaching this now because for so many years, I made myself wrong. And I tried to fit into a box with sales and money making and business that literally had me so stressed out. I developed a full blown eating disorder and was, making money, but struggling with extreme anxiety the whole time. And when I learned how to heal those wounds, amazing shifts happen. I turned my annual income into my monthly income in 6 weeks. I dropped the anxiety, healed pretty intense health issues. And that's really what this is about, what this masterclass is about. And so if you want to join, obviously from the name, it's really designed for a woman who's looking to break through six figures and beyond this year. But I've got women in there who are, just starting businesses and they want to have a $5,000 month, and that's exciting to them. And I've got women who are going for multiple seven figures. So it's really about, if you're looking to find a different way to make money that fully aligns with your feminine energy and all of who you are, and that honors your spiritual connection and lets money flow easily, lets sales flow easily to you, then you definitely want to be there. So you can go to ElyseArcher.com/6figures and get registered. Again, ElyseArcher.com/6figures. And that's coming up on May 27th if you're listening to this in real time. And if you're not, send me a DM and I can let you know when we're hosting the next one. I don't know when the next one will be, so definitely go ahead and get registered for this one now if you're listening in real time. But if you listen later, you can send me a DM and I'll let you know if we've got one coming up. So with all of that, let's talk about what we're talking about today. Like I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, my focus has shifted a lot over the past, I would say, year, especially since having our son. To old Elyse was all about like, how do I just make more money, make more money, make more money, make more money? But that's one component of a really full life. And I think when you haven't yet made a decent amount of money, that's the focus because you're kind of in survival mode. But once you do, you realize there's so much more to life. And again, going back to what I said at the beginning, all the money in the world doesn't matter if you don't have friends, if you're struggling with anxiety, if you are struggling with health issues. And I have experienced all of those things in my life at certain points in time. And so my guest today is really, to me, the embodiment of a woman who helps her clients. So she works with men and women, but primarily women, like really leading that full life. And her name is Michelle Koert, and she's the founder of P Corp. And it's a lifestyle design program that's really designed to help you thrive in all areas of your life. So think relationships, health, career, spirituality, adventure, parenting. I mean, all of it. And Michelle and I actually met, going back to the power of masterminds. We met in another coaching program that I was part of a couple of years back. We met, I think it was in Vancouver, and just immediately clicked. We were both like on the pregnancy journey and going through some ups and downs there. And I just loved her energy. And I'm so excited to bring her to you today. She's a corporate powerhouse. So she's got 26 years of leadership experience in companies like IBM, Google, running her own global concierge company. And so she's seen all of it. And I think that's part of what's so powerful about her background is she knows what it takes to just be a total badass rock star in business and to still really create a full life. And some of the things she's going to share on the podcast today, but this really caught my attention, are just some of these statistics that really inspired her to create P Corp. Things like 20% of millennials say they don't have friends because of increasing use of technology. And that actually really breaks my heart. And like I said before, I can relate to feeling lonely. I can relate to feeling like you've got all these quote unquote friends on social media, but if you're actually having a hard time, who do you call? That's totally been my story at various parts of my life. I've focused on changing that and shifting that. So I'm super grateful that it's not, but that's a really lonely place to be. And I've been there. If you find yourself there, 57% of Americans have less than $1,000 saved. Obesity rates have increased tenfold in our country because of how much we sit. So just all of these things that like I said, all the money in the world doesn't matter if you're struggling in these different areas of your life. So I was so inspired by Michelle, and I made one really big decision right there in the podcast that you'll hear about something I'm going to shift in my own life based on her work. And she's just phenomenal. So anyway, I know this is a longer intro. Like I said, I want to start sharing a little more of my personal life when I'm teeing stuff up. So let me know if you like this or if you don't. And if you're like, Elyse, just hush and get to it. We can do that too for future episodes. But anyway, all of that to say, I am so inspired by today's conversation, and I think you are going to be as well. So without further ado, let's go ahead and welcome Michelle Koert to She Sells Radio. Michelle, I am so beyond excited to have you on She Sells Radio. You are just like such a light of sunshine and goodness in the world. And to have the opportunity to have you on the show after having known you now for a few years and, been in the same mastermind program together, and to see like the amazing work you're doing is so exciting to me. So thank you so much for taking the time to hop on and join us today.
Thank you, Elyse, for having me. It's great to reconnect after a couple of years.
I know, it's so wild. When we were talking too at the beginning, we were just catching up, and I think the last time we spoke, like I hadn't had Jack yet, and I was like, oh yeah, he's 9 months now. And you guys are doing an amazing journey too with growing your family. And it's just this time it goes so fast, which I actually
It
think
does.
it's kind of like what you help people with is really making the most out of their life and out of every moment, which
Yeah.
I'm excited to dive in about. So let's start with just a little bit of backstory, Michelle, because you're a corporate powerhouse. You're doing, you have, I think, what most people would say, like, oh my gosh, that's a dream job. Like, who gets to do that? It's amazing. And you've built this incredible brand as well in P Corp. So can
Mhm.
you share a little bit of your background in business and corporate and sales, and then what led to the evolution of what you've now created in your life? And I'll let you fill in all the good details there.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you for having me on. And yeah, so my history is mostly in the corporate world. I have been in IT for about 26 years. But in the midst of that, I also owned a concierge company for almost 10 years. And the second evolution of that, I would say, is the new company that I launched in late 2019, which we'll touch on. But most of my career was actually with IBM. I started in Canada and then moved to the United States. And I would say I hit my probably 10-year mark and I totally hit burnout. I was overworked. I was pulling all-nighters, creating PowerPoint presentations and taking red-eye flights. And I hit a wall. And I ended up having to or choosing to take a 1-year sabbatical at that point. IBM is a wonderful company and they sponsored my green card to the United States. So I've been here ever since. But there's, just a culture of constant work, work, work. And of course, that's up to us to be disciplined, to know when to take the time to ourselves. And so a lot of what I work on now is integration of personal and professional. But at that time, I took a year off and I traveled the world and connected with a lot of beautiful cultures and different tribes, like in Vietnam and the Yvon tribe in Borneo and Okinawa. I spent some time in Japan. And I noticed something really striking about the cultures. I grew up on a farm in Canada
Mm.
and was always outside. We had a beautiful garden. And I think moving to Silicon Valley and just being in that environment was such a contrast to that. And so traveling, I think, gave me this visibility to going back to those roots again and just experiencing how these tribes still lived with each other in multiple generations, all in one home, where here we live in our separate dwellings and separate homes.
Yeah.
And how they all just really were there to support each other and to help each other through anything that was needed, like the true village of taking care of each other.
How did
And
you, so actually, I want to pause you just one
yeah,
moment there because I'm
yeah,
curious how you got the courage to take that year off. Because I think for me, for so many of my listeners, we've been ingrained, like you're speaking about, with that work, work, work culture. And there's probably a vision board dream of taking a year off and traveling. But I would
yeah.
imagine for a lot of people listening, they're saying, that's great for her, but I could never do that. Did you have to overcome limiting beliefs about being able to do that? Even I could see, like, not shame per se, but like taking a break from work, right, is something
Yeah.
that can feel very scary, or people feel like they get their value caught up in work, right? So how did you do that? And then how did you sell it to everybody too? I'm so curious.
Yeah, that's a big topic. So one of my non-negotiables is taking a sabbatical every single year.
Mm.
So I typically will take a month, and I've taken 2 1-year sabbaticals in my career, and I've taken several 1-month sabbaticals. And it is a combination of doing the work you need to do and negotiation and asking. I think especially as us women, we don't take the opportunity to ask. And I do believe that more companies are looking for a variety of experience. And so the experience that I had, for example, in that first sabbatical that I took at that 10-year mark was so invaluable that I came back with different skill sets and different communication style and a different way to connect more deeply and compassionately with people. And frankly, not became more feminine, but my feminine was pretty MIA
Oh yeah.
after the first
I
IBM.
experienced that.
And
Uh-huh.
so I think it was a very inward journey, and I really found that feminine again. And I was able to bring that back into the corporate world. And I do think that especially B Corps and maybe other organizations that have some of this around their core values, where one path is not the only path, but to have those other experiences in life is invaluable. It's experiential learning.
Oh
And
my God.
so I really I asked. I was going through a little bit of family things with my family in Canada at the time as well, and since that time, I've just, if as long as you're producing and you have results and you present it as a business case, in our business world, you do have to present it as a business case. But I think there is a lot more open-mindedness to taking those opportunities, and then they guaranteed my position back. Not maybe the exact same accounts, but guaranteed the position back. So,
I mean, literally, and I know you're about to keep just like blowing our
no,
minds, but you could say nothing else. And I would be so inspired right now. I'd be like, we're good, we're done. I'm scheduling a sabbatical right now. I'm just so inspired by that. And I know everyone listening is as well. So yeah, thank you for that. And so keep telling us. So you take the sabbatical, you see the other cultures, it sounds like
yes.
your paradigm shifted in terms of how people live and what else is out there. And then what happened?
So one of the things, so I set some intention to spend some time in areas that were blue zones. Are you familiar with blue zones?
So I'm vaguely familiar. It's so funny. I've just started talking with my husband about this concept like last week, and it was the first time I'd heard of it. So the timing is perfect. And please explain for me and for everyone who's not familiar.
Sure. So just quickly, it's areas in the world that have a high concentration of centenarians. So people who live to be over 100 years old. And there's a number of different ingredients that are associated with why. Some of the obvious ones of just having access to healthy soil and healthy foods. And there's places in Costa Rica, in Greece, in Japan, and there's just a few concentrations of areas that have these centenarians. And so they've done a ton of studies on why. And I was able to spend some time with those cultures. And one of the things that struck me so deeply was a sense of community. And one example I'll give is something called the Maoris, and they're in Okinawa, Japan. And they connected these Maoris to longevity. And a Maui is this group of 5 or 6 lifelong friends who are there for you no matter what. And so typically women live longer than men. And what would happen is a woman would have 4 children, let's say, and her husband would pass, and she would still have 60 years, 50 or 60 years more of life. So they did studies on, and I was able to meet a couple of women who are centenarians there. And they literally had this group of friends who, no matter what, for parenting, for career, for finances, for all of the different categories of life, depending on where their skill sets were, they were there for each other. And I thought, we don't have that truly in this modern culture anymore.
Yeah, not at all.
And thinking about Silicon Valley just as one example, I thought, how could we, or I, bring this back in a modern way to Silicon Valley? So the modern way that I did that was creating a personal board of advisors. is like the Maui, the equivalent of a Maui.
Yeah.
And I just started testing it, and I tested it with myself first. And it has been one of the greatest experiences. So I've had a therapist and I've had coaches and mentors, but there is a whole different dynamic by having a group or a personal board of advisors who are this counsel and these advisors who are all there in support of your ultimate highest potential and your ultimate well-being.
I find this concept so fascinating. And I know this is one of your pillars, and what you talk about is the need for community and friendship. And so we can, maybe go into that in a bit. But part of what struck me too, as you talked about the Maui and the sense of community you share you've got this incredible deck that I know you'll share with people how they can get it, about the importance of a personal board of advisors. But there's a statistic you share in there that, what is it, 20% of millennials would say they don't have friends, right?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I can only imagine that that number might continue to go up for Gen Z and beyond, because everything is so just social media. And it's like, we have friends, but we don't have friends, right? And I know I can relate to that. I went through a period of my life in my late 20s and early 30s, and I'm technically millennial, although very on the cusp, but I went through a period of life where it was like, I've got the job, I've got the money, I've got, husband and relationship. But I was like, I don't have girlfriends who I can call and talk to, because I hadn't prioritized it. I'd prioritized money and work because that was what made me feel secure. So I'm just so excited about this concept of the personal board of advisors for the community and for everything else that it provides. So tell us a little bit about what this concept is all about, and how we can create one, and why you think it's so important.
Well, thank you for the question, because I think it's very alive right now, and even more relevant than when I started hosting my first workshops around this, which was in 2019, just before the pandemic. And I think as a result of the pandemic, so many of us have gone through a wide spectrum of experience. Some have really suffered, and not one person has not been impacted by what we've gone through in 2020 and going through still in 2021. And so some have suffered and some have really thrived. But within that, I think we all have experienced life on a much deeper level, right? Like parenting on a deeper level, schooling from home on a different level, working from home on a different level. So I think everyone really took time to reflect too on, like, what is most important? Like, how do I want my life to look now that there's something so serious and like something we only experience once every 100 years, right? That something so profound has happened, and to take that time to reflect. So I think 2021 now, we're like, last year was such a survival year. And so now going into 2021, I think people have maybe some more opportunity to vision and to set goals and to look at how they want to design their life. And so creating a personal board of advisors is one of those things that I think, especially if you think of examples during the pandemic, would have been so valuable to support. And I know my board has supported me through personal and professional experiences. So I'll talk a little bit about how I invited them. Maybe is that what would work?
Let's talk about that. And here's the other thing I just want to ask you too, before you do.
Yeah.
Do you find that most people have never taken the time to actually intentionally map out what they want and what their life to be like? I feel like when I work with clients, that's one of the first things I do. And a lot of times they're like, I don't know the last time I thought about that. Do you find that
Yes.
with this process too?
I do, because I do executive coaching within Google. And it's one of the things that has been really prevalent is there's this, okay, I want to move towards promotion. I want to move up the corporate ladder. But there hasn't been time taken to really go through the process of, what do you want your life to really look like in your daily life? Like, do you want to be on conference calls all day, for example?
Yeah.
Like, that's a very valid question. Do you want to be location free? That's another valid question. where are you in the process of building a family, or where is your family at? And I think it's such a, I hear you. I think it's such an important first question to really ask, is to really understand where their passions are, their strengths are, and what is it that they truly like, the meaning of life for them. And a question I always ask is, what does it mean to you to have a life well lived?
Ooh. Mm. That's good.
And dissecting that and going underneath the covers of that and kind of working backwards. Like even part of my new program, it's called P Corp, which stands for personal corporation, but it's a merging of personal and professional. And even within that program, we look at death and we look at transition, and even writing your own eulogy and doing death cafes. But it's a way to inform, how do you want to live now? How do you want to live this life now? So it's, examples of, if you are on your deathbed, would you have wanted to work more? Possibly, if it's the work that you're really aligned to and that you really love.
Yeah.
So
well, and this is part of what I think is so powerful about like travel and about seeing these other cultures, is that we get so caught up in our own paradigm of, this is how I was raised, this is what I saw my parents do. I've been talking so much lately with my own clients about just mindset and the fact that the first 7 years of your life, you're basically under hypnosis. So you take in everything you hear your parents and people raising you to say as to be true. So if people say like, you got to work really hard to make money, then you take that as your identity. And for the rest of your life, that will be your belief system, unless you're exposed to something else. So what I love about this is, it's almost like, for some reason, this clicked for me last year, and I don't know why, but something clicked and I was like, I can decide how I want my life to be. And if there's a part where I'm going down a path that doesn't feel good, then I can shift it by studying how other people live and getting outside feedback and just being open to different paradigms, different ways of thinking. So I love this because I think it's a level of stepping back and being intentional and realizing that you don't have to live life on the hamster wheel your whole life if you don't want to. And you talk about like at the end of your life, what's going to matter. I'm sure you read Bronnie Ware, Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. It's like
I haven't actually.
Oh, it's amazing. It would be, so she was I guess like a hospice worker, and she had just many, many people that she helped in that transition. And there were these 5 common regrets of people when they died. Not a one of them was, I wish I worked more. Yeah. And so that gave me such perspective. So yeah, please keep telling us about, what is this board? How do we assimilate it? But I just wanted to add that because I think I didn't used to value this type of stuff. I thought it was all work, 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 money, money, money. And that's a really empty way to live. That's like one part of life. Yes. So yeah.
Well, I think we have this, thank you for that. And I feel like we have this amazing opportunity right now, because let's start with a clean slate. Like I want to really challenge whoever's listening to this to start with a clean slate and really take last year's experience, or what we're going through with this pandemic, to really sit back and reflect on this. And I really am a supporter of not escaping corporate, but how do we figure out ways to really show how you shine and really be yourself within the corporate environment and find the right alignment. And if that means creating your own position, your own unique position that still would have value to the company, but it matches to what your core value system is, then let's do that too. So there's, I think, in entrepreneurship, and this is, sometimes we move into entrepreneurship very intentionally, and sometimes we escape it because we're escaping something that we don't want. So part of my mission is to create this environment that is nourishing and sustainable, almost like creating centenarians within the corporate environment, so that companies eventually become centennials, where sometimes there's this turnover all the time, right? But how do we last the next 100 years? And I guess there's only 5% of companies who are actually centennials.
Wow, interesting.
And I look at that and I go, why is that? And how do we create, and there's benefits, pros and cons on both sides, right? if you're going through companies quickly. But yeah, so I think we have a unique opportunity to start with a clean slate. And one pillar of my program is creating a board of advisors. And I think you can do it in many different ways. It's a very personal choice. I'll share how I did it with mine and how typically I guide clients. And what's nice is that you can set one up for if it's just a really important decision that you have to make in your life right now, whether that's a career decision, a parenting decision, or a personal decision. But if it's a really important, let's say, career decision, then you could set one up just for that experience. In my case, I've set it up holistically so that they help with relationships, wealth planning, contribution planning, education, all of the pillars. There's like 12 pillars that I have.
Yeah.
And so the way I went about asking is, because this is a tough thing. You really have to respect their time. And I have 6 women on my board. And so I get challenged that it's not diverse enough. And so I recognize, so I do challenge clients to look at diversity in setting up your board. But again, it's personal choice. So I have 6 great women. They're all different backgrounds. One's a lawyer, one's a doctor, one's a real estate agent, another one's a fitness coach. One is a entrepreneur who owns several different organizations, and another one's an angel investor. And so when I asked them, I wrote them physical letters. And I spoke about the vision that I had with this program, my experiences overseas, connecting with these tribes, and what I wanted to bring to the modern world, and using Silicon Valley as an example. And I wrote these letters, and I talked about the qualities and the characteristics that I saw in them, that they're all playing a bigger game than me. They inspire me in every way that they act in their life and what they stand for. A fun question I asked was, who would I want as my executor of state?
Yeah.
So when I share the deck with your guests, they can see the list of questions that I reflected on, and then certainly people can add to those questions as well. But there's very specific questions that you can ask. And so I wrote these letters, and I think because I went about it in such a respectful way and set it up so that I was not wasting their time, because they're all incredibly busy executives. They are all parents. So you can imagine, right?
Yes.
And they all said yes.
Amazing.
And so we meet quarterly, and I hosted a couple of in-person retreats. And
okay, so if you guys hear a little bit of a drop off, we had a very 2021 thing where one of our Zooms dropped off, but we're back. And so, Michelle, you were saying that you meet with your personal board of advisors, you have quarterly retreats, right? Like, tell us a little bit more about how you personally use your board.
Yes. So we have, so the first yearly retreat that we did was basically presenting my life plan to them. And I focused on a couple of areas that were most alive. And one was launching my new company, P Corp. And what was amazing was sharing the details of that and the vision for that for the very first time in a beautiful setting. Have you ever heard of 1440 Multi-University?
No, where is it? I need to go.
It's in Santa Cruz Mountains.
Oh, wow.
And it's this beautiful retreat center. And so we hosted it there. And then it was a full day, and this exchange of ideas and feedback and guidance and counsel. And it was like this barrage of exchange that was happening that you wouldn't normally get when you're just meeting one-on-one with a coach. And so when one would have an idea, it would spark an idea in another, and they would all feed off of each other. And it was a profound experience. I mean, to take a village to have a child, I mean, in a way, birthing a business is like having a baby. And so they really helped me with that. And so that was kind of the kickoff. And then at the same time, I was looking at a new career at Google. And all of them came on to help in their unique way, given just the relationships or the referrals. And so a couple made referrals. They slaughtered my resume. They did role playing with me on interview scenarios, because I don't know if you've heard how intense the Google interviews can be. And then helped me with negotiating my contract. And still help with different phases of the Google corporate journey. And it's been amazing. So there's that spectrum of it, like on the career side as an example.
I love that. I love that. And we're going to have to, just for time, we're going to have to wrap and tell people where they can get the deck to learn more. But one quick question that showed up for me is like, it sounds like you're not paying them necessarily. It's more like you're inviting them in to be part of this experience. And so am I understanding that right? That they're doing it for free because they love you and care about you?
Yes. So in this case, they are doing it out of the graciousness of their hearts. I do have a model though that shows how you can compensate your board, your personal board. So that's something that I can share with your guests as part of, there might be a little bit of information of that in the deck. And then certainly if they connect with me one-on-one. And so last year was my highest earning year, and had an incredible deal that they were great counsel for. And so there were several who were really involved in it, in counseling, who I compensated as a result of closing the deal. So that was never the intent in the beginning per se. Well, maybe an intent, but it sort of evolved into that. And it was just this beautiful surprise to them as part of the process. And it just flowed naturally. So, but in this case, they're graciously offering their services.
It's so great. And I think that's the exciting thing about this model is someone can do this a lot of different ways. And I know you've really mapped out the model in a way in which, if someone wants to compensate, they can do it. Or I'm sure just through sharing your own example, people are hearing about how you can do it, even if you don't yet have money to compensate someone. So tell everyone listening about how they can find out more. You've put together this beautiful deck that explains the model. And I remember I was reading through it and just moved, like literally almost crying at some of the statistics of how a lot of the world lives. And even in, a lot of my listeners are in the States, they're throughout the world, but a lot are in the States, and even just in a place where we have, money and abundance, lack of community, lack of friendships. And so it's an amazing, amazing program, an amazing deck. And so please tell everyone, where can they go? Like, how can they receive this information from you? How can they find out more if they want to talk with you about creating their own personal board of advisors? Because I know they're going to want to connect with you.
Absolutely. So the best way would be to email me, and it's Michelle at pcorps.com. And I'm happy to share the deck and a number of videos and things that I have, the assets that I have that I can share with them. And that will give them initial taste. And then certainly happy to gift a 1-hour discovery discussion with your guests as well.
Amazing. That's so amazing. And I think if part of what I love about what you're doing is about, if 2020 taught us nothing, it's about being really intentional about every day and valuing every day. And so I think, for myself and for everyone listening, I'll speak personally, I'm so moved by what you're doing. And I think it's so important. So guys, please connect with Michelle, send her that email. You said it's Michelle at pcorps.com, right?
Yes.
Okay. Send the email. Get on the phone too, like book a complimentary discovery call with Michelle too, just to talk about how to really create your own board of advisors and live your most full life. At the end of the day, that's what this is about. So Michelle, thank you for the beautiful work you're doing and for transforming your own personal experience into something that benefits the rest of the world. We're so grateful for you and for what you're doing and then for your time here today sharing it as well.
Thank you so much, Elyse. I really appreciate it. It was so great to connect with you again.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Well, listen, thank you so much for taking the time to be with me and Michelle today, wherever you are. Remember, your life matters and the enjoyment and quality of your life matters as well. So connect with Michelle. And then until next time, just wishing you the most love, success, joy, happiness, peace, and abundance. And we will see you very soon for the next episode of She Sells Radio. Bye for now.